world's largest floating structure. Its name is Prelude FLNG, and its dimensions are truly gigantic. 74 meters wide, 100 meters high, and 488 meters long. So massive, in fact, that it could withstand the most ferocious waves. By way of comparison, Prelude is 128 meters longer than the Harmony of the Seas, the current holder of the title of the world's largest cruise ship, which at 362 meters is already very impressive. It is even 30 meters longer than the Seawise Giant, the largest supertanker ever built. Quite simply, Prelude is so enormous that you'd almost have to leave the shipbuilding industry to find a match for its sheer size. In fact, if it could be placed vertically, it would rival the Taipei 101 Tower in Taiwan, one of the world's tallest skyscrapers. With its full tanks, the Prelude station could weigh in at over 600,000 tons, the equivalent of 430,000 medium-sized cars. And it took 260,000 tons of steel to build, the equivalent of 35 Eiffel Towers. A true monster of the seas, not designed to carry containers from one end of the planet to the other. In fact, it's a real floating facility designed to extract and liquefy natural gas in the sea. Conceived by the oil company Royal Dutch Shell, the project has been named Prelude, after the name of the first gas field to be exploited in the Browse Basin, 200 kilometers northwest of the Australian coast. So why set up a liquefaction plant in the middle of the ocean? Well, it's mainly for financial reasons. Once extracted from underground aquifers, natural gas is transported from the platforms to land via endless pipelines, which can often exceed 1,000 miles to reach the plant where it is then liquefied. This change of state transforms the gas into a liquid, reducing its volume by a factor of 600, a way of optimizing gas storage before it is shipped to its destination market. The problem is that these links between extraction platforms and liquefaction plants, added to the costs of subsea maintenance, require very heavy investment. Hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. Investments that only become profitable for very large gas fields. However, global demand for natural gas is booming, and we now need to exploit smaller offshore deposits that are not profitable enough for this type of installation and yet account for 40% of the world's gas reserves. It was then that the new concept of a floating facility began to emerge, with a triple objective: to liquefy the gas on site as soon as it is extracted, to store it on board, and then to serve as an offshore delivery point for LNG tankers. Of course, such a facility represents a monstrous cost, between $5 and $6 billion, according to the experts. But unlike investments in gas pipelines, the platform itself is reusable. In fact, once the field has dried up, the floating plant simply needs to be dragged ashore for maintenance so that it can be put out to sea again to exploit another gas field for 20 to 25 years. With an estimated production capacity of 5.3 million tons per year, Prelude alone can supply enough liquefied natural gas to satisfy the needs of a city as populous as Hong Kong, with over 7 million inhabitants. The challenge for Prelude was to fit an entire liquefaction plant into a 488-meter-long building, the size limit imposed by one of the world's largest shipyards and also one of the only ones able to accommodate a building of this size, Samsung Heavy Industries, located on Goeje Island in South Korea. In fact, the dry dock where Prelude was built can accommodate up to 4 container ships. This mega platform of unprecedented scale was built over 5 years, between 2012 and 2017. At the site's peak, 6,000 workers were mobilized.
It's amazing. It's very big, it's very impressive, and it's a fantastic achievement by everybody.
A true world first, the construction of a large vessel such as Prelude implies meeting some real technical challenges. Firstly, to compact an entire plant comprising hundreds of kilometers of piping, numerous boilers and storage tanks into a building less than 500 meters long. This meant reducing the plant's dimensions by a factor of 4 compared with a land-based installation. In the end, almost 600 engineers worked on the project to meet the challenge. Another challenge in the marine environment was anchoring this floating city. In fact, Prelude had to be moored to the seabed so that it could remain permanently vertical to the extraction wells. Given the duration of its mission, between 20 and 25 years, it must also be capable of withstanding the most extreme weather conditions. What's more, unlike some floating oil rigs which can disconnect from the well in an emergency, Shell decided that Prelude should remain connected and operational in all weathers in order to maximize its profitability. As a result, the anchor was designed and sized to withstand Category 5 cyclones, the strongest intensity on the Saffir-Simpson scale, equivalent to wind speeds of between 300 and 400 kilometers per hour.
We get into the cyclones, and this mooring system will hold us in place.
This technical feat was made possible by a set of 16 250-meter-long chains linked to giant anchors, which are in fact huge steel cylinders sunk into the ocean floor. This operation is performed by huge hydraulic hammers designed to work underwater. On the surface, the anchor chains are connected to the turret, an enormous vertical column that runs through the building and remains in a fixed position relative to the seabed and the well. Prelude can therefore rotate permanently around this axis to offer the least possible resistance to current, wind, and swell. A huge turret also houses 4 flow lines, long, flexible umbilical cords allowing gas to flow up from the well to Prelude. At 93 meters in height and 30 meters in diameter, it's the biggest fixed turret in the world. So gigantic that it could house the entire Statue of Liberty with its pedestal. Finally, the ultimate challenge for this giant of the seas is loading liquefied natural gas into LNG carriers. Normally, LNG carriers load and unload their cargo in protected ports. Here they have to be able to tie up to a much taller vessel on the high seas to boot and operate in all weather conditions. Gas cooled to minus 162 degrees Celsius has to be transferred from a moving vessel to a moving ship over a period of 12 to 20 hours, the time required to carry out the operation. A real challenge which required equipping the floating facility with 3 by 6,700 GP thrusters. To give you an idea, each of these thrusters has the power of the world's most powerful diesel locomotive built by General Motors. With such power, they can turn Prelude around its turret so that one of its sides is turned against the wind, so that LNG tankers can moor on the other, sheltered from the giant. The operation also requires 3 tugs to help the tankers tie up and to intervene in the event of an emergency, as this loading operation in the open sea is particularly risky. In the event of a leak during the operation, the methane, which would revert to the gaseous phase, could ignite and cause the loss of the ships, and if it were to escape underwater, the risk would be no less great. The methane would then drastically reduce the density of the water beneath the vessel and risk dragging its 600,000 tons, the LNG carrier and the tugs, to the bottom of the ocean. The crews are rotated to the ground by helicopter, thanks to a helipad adjacent to the living quarters. A real building, the same size as the Arc de Triomphe, which can accommodate over 300 people.
It's like a Hilton hotel. I wouldn't mind staying there for a few weeks.
The Prelude crew is supplied with food by boat, but remains completely self-sufficient in energy. The opposite would indeed be rather surprising for a vessel whose gas reserves seem almost inexhaustible. With its revolutionary concept, the Prelude station will undoubtedly launch a new era in the naval and energy industries as it enables us to meet the ever-increasing demand for natural gas while reducing production and transport costs for the energy industry. A solution with a bright future ahead of it. Now let's talk about a slightly less imposing vessel, but one that is no less impressive. Few man-made moving structures are larger than a modern cruise ship or supertanker. Yet even these giants of the seas sometimes need help, whether to be rescued or simply moved in the event of a breakdown. Fortunately, there are ships that transport other ships. In naval terms, they're called semi-submersible heavy transport vessels. And the ship I'm going to introduce to you now, Boka Vanguard, is the champion of this category. Deployed in 2012 by Dutch shipowner Dockwise and acquired by its compatriot Boskalis in 2013, the 275-meter-long, 79-meter-wide Boka Vanguard is the largest transport vessel ever built, surpassing the previous record holder, the Blue Marlin, which was already capable of transporting an entire radar station. With offshore oil and gas installations becoming ever larger, shipowner Dockwise saw a high-potential market and imagined a vessel that could transport the largest floating platforms to their destinations, while reducing transport time and costs by enabling these platforms to be built economically in a shipyard. In addition, the Dockwise Vanguard will also be designed as an offshore dry dock, enabling floating oil platforms to be lifted out of the water for inspection and maintenance operations without having to interrupt production. This is a major economic advantage for operators who usually need to have their platforms towed ashore for these maintenance operations, leaving them out of service for several months. The Boka Vanguard has been designed to handle heavy cargoes with a maximum load capacity of 117,000 tons. To give you an idea, 110,000 tons is roughly the weight of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the US Navy's largest aircraft carrier in service. Although it usually carries large oil platforms or floating production and storage units, such as the Prelude, this unusual vessel is also multifunctional, as it can also be used to transport or repair other vessels, as happened in 2019 with the Carnival Vista, a huge cruise ship with a capacity of 4,000 passengers and 1,500 crew, which had to be rescued in the Caribbean. In fact, the Carnival Vista's propulsion system had failed, and unfortunately, the only dry dock in the region was not available. So an alternative solution had to be found. Thanks to the Boka Vanguard's dispatch from Europe, the liner was safely transported to Freeport, Bahamas. The rescue operation was even filmed, and these fascinating images show a surreal operation in which the 324-meter Carnival Vista is comfortably installed on the deck of the Boka Vanguard. A clockwork precision maneuver. Designed exclusively for transporting gigantic structures, the Vanguard's strange design has been completely optimized for this purpose. The ship takes the form of a completely open rectangular platform, which can accommodate longer cargo wider than the deck. For loading and unloading operations, the hull can be lowered into the water thanks to a system of ballast tanks, which can be filled or emptied with seawater. Like a real freight elevator, this movable deck can descend to depths of up to 16 meters, enabling the transport vessel to accommodate various types of floating cargo, such as gigantic oil platforms or entire ships. Once the cargo is moored to the deck, the ballast tanks can be emptied, allowing the Vanguard to rise to the surface thanks to Archimedes' principle, lifting its heavy cargo with it. Once the cargo has been loaded, the Boka Vanguard can begin its journey, just like any other ship, although in reality it is without doubt one of the most impressive and astonishing vessels ever built. Excessive for some, a feat of engineering for others, these true monsters of the seas are nonetheless extraordinary and utterly subjugating. They remind us just how ingenious mankind can be when it comes to building ever more complex and ambitious structures. Alright, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching and see you soon on Looking For.